People tryna say I'm only in the meeting. Got a cold with my dogs, can't get in between. I can give them life, no more energy. Amen.
Welcome in, everybody. Happy holidays. And we're blessed enough to have 2 football games on Christmas Day. I'm with my man JJ, and that's just another blessing that I get to spend the holidays making videos with JJ talking about football. So JJ, how are we doing, man?
We're doing great. We were so sharp last night with the picks. Both of them hit in the first quarter, and then we just had to wait for the under. Saints looked like they did not want to win. We just kept texting back and forth about it. It was hilarious.
I think they had the under.
Not even that they don't want to win. It's just they wanted to go under on the spread and the game total as well. So it was funny.
Bro, third down at like the 35-yard line in field goal range. Multiple 10-yard sacks that happened like 2 or 3 times. Get in the red zone, interception. I was like, dude, I am thankful for New Orleans Saints today. But today, depending on when you're watching this, whether it's today or tomorrow morning on Christmas Day, we got 2 games. We have the Chiefs playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens playing against the Houston Texans. Both these teams played on Saturday, or all 4 of these teams played on Saturday. The matchups have just flip-flopped. And, hey, I mean, we had good football on Saturday. We'll have good football today. We'll kick things off with the Chiefs and Steelers game. I believe it's the first one. And this one is going to be a grind, dude. I mean, we think about how both of these teams play. The Chiefs have the most plays per drive and some of the longest drives in the NFL. The Steelers try and win the same way. Both these teams want to win games 20-17, 24-20. They don't try and blow teams out. They win ugly. So the fact they're both playing each other and they're debatably the only 2 NFL teams that do play this way, this is either going to be an amazing, surprise everybody 40-39 game, or it's going to be 17-14. Either way, I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be interesting. But we'll get into some of the props. And JJ, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think with these 2 teams, they're just going to grind it out on defense, low-scoring type of game. Lately, I mean, they probably still have been doing it, but I mean, both teams in general playing a lot of man coverage right here, right? Since week 10, 33% for KC and 44% for the Steelers. Now, someone that you could be worried about, but is finally back, George Pickens. I know Pittsburgh is happy for him to be back, but he's going to have a tough matchup against Trent McDuffie, right? So maybe you might want to steer away from him or just take his longest reception probably. He's always due for at least one big play. Now it's just going to be a matter of how efficient it's going to be. He doesn't get a whole lot of volume, but he'll get a few big plays that just make up for it. So he may have 4 catches for 87 yards or something like that. But I don't know if he's going to get 4 receptions, but I mean, we'll see. Like I said, I think it's going to be a defensive game here. So you probably want to target middle of the field, which KC has been vulnerable to. And I believe that is Calvin Austin. Am I right?
Yep. He's going to be coming out of the slot. He was doing really well when Pickens was out, and his numbers before Pickens got hurt aren't the greatest. But even after last game, the coach came out and said Calvin Austin's been impressing him a lot. I think even when Pickens comes back, I think he has a role for sure.
Yeah. And then looking at the other passing options, I would say Pat Freiermuth, but he just doesn't get used at all. He didn't get his first target last week until 41 seconds left in the half. And then he had 2 targets in the fourth quarter. With Russell Wilson and with George Pickens playing, he's just not getting the ball that often. I think 3-4 targets max is what he's going to be at. But it's just, is he going to actually haul those catches in too? I would rather fade or just stay away from completely. What are you thinking?
Yeah. No, I'm completely with you. I mean, both of us really have been targeting tight ends against the Chiefs every week. It just feels like that's, especially on primetime, the first thing we look at. Oh, Chiefs are playing. Who's the tight end on the other side? And it's been printing for us. But I'm not putting my hard-earned money on Pat Freiermuth. Somebody's losing their Christmas gift fund because Pat Freiermuth is like Russell Wilson's I don't know what he did to Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson just does not want to throw to him. I don't know who's at
Yeah.
fault, but all I know is I'm not putting money on Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah, maybe Arthur Smith just wants back Jonnu Smith. Maybe that's all that is.
Arthur Smith came out early in the season because everybody was complaining that Freiermuth wasn't being used, like all the fans, and he was like, "Oh, I've done this my whole career where like Kyle Pitts, like I don't have to use my best guys." And everybody's like, "Is this guy really bragging about not using his best players?" Like, I don't think that's something you should be publicly like telling everybody. Yeah, I have this guy. I'm not using him. Yeah, look at me.
Yeah.
It's Arthur Smith is something else. But one thing
Yes,
we know he
he
loves
is.
to do, lean on the run game. Even if Najee Harris is averaging 2.5 yards per carry, he will run the ball 25 times. The issue is, well, I don't even know if it's an issue anymore. The Chiefs' run defense is pretty good. I'd argue better than their pass defense. The issue now is the last 6-7 weeks, they've gone from like a top 10 run defense, maybe even top 5, to now they're like bottom 14, 15 in terms of DVOA against the run. And even if you narrow it down to the last 3-4 weeks, maybe that's even worse. But it is something that I noticed that the Chiefs defense, well, they haven't been bad enough for people to put the spotlight on them and say, hey, they're struggling. I think people are giving them too much credit for how they started and kind of ignoring that they've been a little worse lately. And it's been on both the run and passing side from what I've noticed. I don't know if you've kind of seen the same thing.
No, I'm definitely seeing the same thing. I mean, we try to look for injuries to see if that was the case, but I think teams are just figuring them out right now. And I mean, going into the playoffs, maybe they'll make some adjustments later on, like during the playoffs, kind of like what Baltimore did last year going into the playoffs. Because remember, their run defense was horrible going into the playoffs. And then as soon as that was at the wild card game against the Texans, they just stepped it up, and they've been good ever since. So maybe they'll do the same thing here.
We'll see. We know how the Chiefs are with their voodoo magic, so we'll see who does something crazy that nobody can predict, and suddenly everything that we're saying turns into nothing. But all that to basically say, Jaylen Warren got more work than Najee Harris did last week. I don't know if that's going to continue. I think this is definitely more of you're banking on those 3 yards per carry to get you to 3rd and shorts more so than you're banking on the running back to get you those first downs with how the Chiefs try and grind out long drives both offensively and defensively. And I think that's going to fit the bill a little bit more for Najee. They were probably keeping a little bit more fresh for this game since they knew it was going to be a short week. So it could go either way. This is all a long way of saying I'm not touching any props on the Steelers side, except maybe I do like Calvin Austin receiving yards. I'm not going to lie. I think his lines are low enough where there is value. Calvin Austin does get plays in chunks. He's not one of those shallow 5-6 yard crosser receivers. He's like 10, 15, 20 yard receptions. He'll get 2 or 3, and that's his game. That's Pittsburgh side. Chiefs side, dude, where do we start? I mean, everybody's healthy now. We already knew they had Kelsey, Xavier Worthy. They've had them all the season. They added D-Hop. Now Hollywood Brown's healthy. Noah Gray has been there all the time. So they have 5 legit options. Now Isaiah Pacheco's back. You could use him in the run game or receiving game here and there. Kareem Hunt has just been a workhorse. Samaje Perine is another viable option out of the backfield. I mean, you could really go anywhere with the ball against them. But that Steelers defense, it's not one to mess with. It's not one to take lightly. Joey Porter, we don't know if he's playing or not. So where's the edge on the Chiefs side, do you think?
Chiefs side, I think we talked about it a little bit earlier before the video, and we're thinking Noah Gray here. I think his snap, even though players have been fully healthy now last week, he's still been getting consistent snap usage. And I think having a solid tight end matchup here, I think he could definitely take advantage of his lines are low enough. Is there anything else you're seeing with that play?
Not really. The only thing that I do want to notice is the targets for tight ends against the Steelers seems to do a lot better than the yards. So if I'm taking Noah Gray, ideally I'm taking receptions over receiving yards. If you're scared of Hollywood Brown getting more and more usage, because even though Hollywood Brown got 8 targets last game, he was only on the field for 33% of routes. So if that goes up, I don't know who else's snap share would go down except for Noah Gray. And if that's the case, now Travis Kelce drops into a more traditional tight end role, and now he gets the advantage of the tight end matchup. When on the other side, when they run two tight ends, it's usually Noah Gray in the more traditional tight end role, and Travis Kelce is like a big slot. So I don't have the answer for which one it's going to be, but it is something to keep an eye on for live betting. If you're like, oh, Hollywood Brown's been on the field for 7 of the first 9 snaps, who am I going to go take? I'd go Travis Kelce. But if you're like, oh, Hollywood Brown's been on the field for 1 route in the first drive, go get yourself Noah Gray. But that's really the only thing I'd see. And then outside of that, Joey Porter depends on how much we like or don't like DeAndre Hopkins. So until we know that entry news, I'm not going to recommend anything. Hollywood Brown got 8 targets last week in his first game back. They clearly have a use for him. And by the way, they talked about it in the postgame presser, they do really like him. But man, his line's like 3.5 receptions juiced over like crazy. If he's only on the field for 15 routes, 16 routes, I mean, I know he just got 8 targets. But part of that is also, hey, this other team doesn't have any film on him. Let's use him while it's fresh. But the more that they use and the more teams see him, the more they can game plan for him. And now those 15 routes lead to 2 targets instead of 8 targets. So that part's interesting. And the last one to go over is Xavier Worthy. His ADOT's been going down. And I say my tone was like, that's a bad thing. That's a good thing. It means they're using him more screens, getting him in space, letting his speed go to work rather than just him being a deep ball merchant. And I think it's opened up the offense a decent bit for him as well. So his receptions and his usage has been going up because of it. And I mean, you just everybody, this Chiefs team is going to become unbettable in the playoffs just because everybody can get work on this team.
Nope.
That's really all there is about it. Ryan, Hunt, and Pacheco, by the way, right now, they're all like pretty much an even split in terms of snap share. And Ryan's getting more routes, but then Hunt, Pacheco are damn near splitting 50-50 on the rush attempts. So it's just I'm not touching it. I'm sorry. That's really everything I have in this game. I don't know if I missed anything.
No, that's pretty much it for that game.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into the next game then. We got Baltimore and we got Houston. The last game we just talked about, we were like, hey, there's a lot of avenues that could go. I don't know what's going to happen. This is different. Baltimore, Houston, I'm excited to watch. think both of us have a pretty good read on it. And I think that's going to be the more interesting game too, assuming it's not a blowout. Yep. But the one big piece of information that's worth noting, Tank Dell, knee injury, probably out for the season after last week. So now it's just Nico Collins and everybody else in that Texans receiving group. And Deontay Johnson was cut from the Ravens. And then the Houston Texans actually picked him up. I don't think he's going to play, but we'll see. We'll see if there's a narrative built around that in the Houston locker room or not. But yeah, that's all I wanted to share before I throw it to you, Jay.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna go over the coverages real quick. So they're pretty much the opposite. So looking since week 10, Baltimore 6th in man coverage rate, while Texans are 7th in zone coverage rate. So pretty much the opposites here. It looks like Houston's relying more on let's see, we got cover 3, 4, and 6 mainly. They still do run some cover 1, 21%, which is decent. It's about average in the league. But I mean, I think best way to target that is probably, I mean, it depends on Zay Flowers, right? Because remember, we were just looking at the injury report. It was a DNP Monday, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and it was DNP Tuesday too, but I'd be shocked if he doesn't play. I'd be shocked.
Yeah, I think outside of that, I mean, looking at Houston, I probably want to air it out against them, even though they have been tough. I mean, it's just because Lamar has just been playing fantastic football lately. I think you're not going to get a whole lot of yak, so that could limit Zay Flowers a little bit. But, I mean, outside of that, what else would you think?
I like Lamar rushing yards a lot in this game. The rush attempts line hasn't changed since last week, but the rushing yards went down 7 yards, like from 51.5 to 44.5. However, I believe this is a much better matchup. Like the Houston Texans running quarterbacks against him has been something that has been profitable this season. So for the books to project the same opportunity they did against a bad Steelers matchup that has done great versus rushing quarterbacks last week, I think it makes a lot of sense for him to have a good game. And on top of that, just thinking logically, when teams have a shorter amount of time to prepare for the game, obviously it's a short week. It's a Wednesday. Teams don't normally play Wednesday. You can't game plan as much. And when you play a guy or a team with a guy like Lamar, and you can't game plan for those non-traditional players that you don't normally see, those video game opening players like Lamar Jackson, it's way more likely that they're going to have those 1, 2, 3 big plays that you only see from guys like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, even a Kyler Murray. So I think there's a lot of value in Lamar Jackson rush yards this week. But that's really the only one that I think, outside of Zay Flowers, that you touched on a little bit. Stingley doesn't shadow at all, really, and teams or corners can't shadow Zay Flowers. He moves around too much. He's in the slot, he's outside. If teams want to shadow, they're just going to put him on Bateman, who's, by the way, been quietly very good this season. So I don't think it's a possibility for anybody to get shadowed in this game. And Zay Flowers has just been a dog against cover one this season. So I think that's going to make a lot of sense for the Ravens. Justice Hill is injured, so Derrick Henry will only get a more increased workload unless they get Ali and Mitchell involved more, which I think is a possibility. I think where they get value is if you think the Ravens do run away with this and make this a blowout. I think Rasheen Ali gets a lot of work. So that's something to keep an eye on. If you want to do a little last touchdown score on the guy, I think there could be value in that. And
I just want to touch on something from last week while you think about that. So last year in the divisional playoffs, Texans, so they still ran about 20% cover one, leaned on cover 3 and cover 4. But something that they tried to do is run 30% cover 0.
Whoa.
Yeah.
For people that number is usually like 5 to 10%, even for the highest teams. 30% is not normal.
Yeah, I think average in the league is typically like 5%, 3 to 5%. So
that's not going to go. I mean, that didn't go well for them last time. That's not going to go well for them if they do that this year.
So I'm curious how much cover 0 they play this game.
I hope they do. I'm a closet Ravens.
I don't think they'll play 30%, but maybe they lean on a little bit. But I mean, if that's the case, that's going to open up a ton of rushing lanes for Lamar here.
Yeah, that offense is way too quick, way too dynamic for you to be blitzing like that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I hope they do that, bro.
Because, yeah, man coverage, you typically want to target rushing quarterbacks. Yet,
especially with
Houston does play a lot of zone this year. But if they go with this game plan, similar to the playoffs, because that's the last time they played them, that could make it interesting.
Lamar had 11 rush attempts for 100 yards. Justice Hill and Gus Edwards combined for 23 attempts on 106 yards. Zay Flowers 4 of 5 for 41 yards. They only threw the ball 22 times. Lamar Jackson completed 16 of those 22. Dude, there's no chance they run this back.
No.
All right, so we're just gonna assume cover 1 and cover 3 because if they do that, it's suicide. I'm just gonna be completely honest. They won the game 34-10. Yeah, no, there's no chance they run that strategy back. All right, we'll go over the Texans real quick as well. Joe Mixon, great start to the season, right? We were talking about him. He was in that Saquon Derrick Henry conversation. That's gone out of the fucking window. He's been horrible. Not horrible, but comparative to what he was doing, he's been horrible. He's been way more inefficient. And now he gets a Baltimore run defense that while they've been poor against the pass, they have been pretty elite against the run. I think they allow the lowest yards per carry in the NFL at like 3.5. So not a good matchup or game script for Joe Mixon.
He starts off slow. He's not going to get a lot of carries. I promise you that.
And then on the pass game, Tank Dell obviously out. Nico Collins, I mean, you have to assume he's just getting like 12 targets because he's that good and there's nobody else. John Mechie looks like he's going to be back. I do like his lines if he is active. Some people want to put Xavier Hutchinson over John Mechie. Don't listen to them. John Mechie is a much better football player than Xavier Hutchinson, in my opinion. But the coaches seem to like Hutchinson as well. The key one, though, Dalton Schultz. In games without one of Nico Collins or Tank Dell, and not counting Stephon Diggs, who's also out, he's over his receiving yards line in 7 of 9 games. And I think 5 or 6 of those are like 60-plus receiving yards. Like, there is very much a role for him when one of those guys is out. And Baltimore has not been good against tight ends all season. We talked about how we target tight ends against the Chiefs. We do the same thing with Baltimore. They have not been good against tight ends. So Dalton Schultz, especially after a big week last week, he's in line for another big week this week without Tank Dell and another good matchup. But that was everything that I had, JJ. If you got anything else?
Nah, that was pretty much it. I mean, Texans side is pretty cut and dry because we have a lot more information with them. And then Ravens, they consistently do the same things each week, so it makes it easy.
I like Ravens games because it's pretty straight. You know they're probably going to win. You know they're not going to let the other team run the ball. And you know they're going to lean on the run. You know where their weaknesses are on the defense. It gets pretty straightforward. I like Ravens games. So let's get into the parlay, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, so for the first game, Steelers and Chiefs, we didn't like any of the player props. There's way too much up in the air with the injury news. There's way too many options that you could go to on the Chiefs side. And what we decided to go with was the game pick. And we went with the Steelers plus 3.5. Mike Tomlin, as an underdog at home, has been profitable ever since he became the Steelers coach. And on top of that, we know that the Chiefs don't really win blowouts. They win ugly. So even if the Chiefs take this game, which they probably will, if it's a close game, 3.5 gives us that 3-point field goal win. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers end up pulling this one out. I know the Chiefs have some crazy voodoo magic. It's got to run out at some point. Why not this week? But that was all we had in that game. We got the player props from the Ravens and Houston game. And for the touchdown prop, we took Lamar Jackson to get 2 passing touchdowns. He's done this in 10 of the last 12 games. And quarterbacks against the Texans have been hitting this like crazy. And the reason why is because 77% of touchdowns against them are passing touchdowns. That ranks 3rd highest in the NFL. We took this with Mahomes last week, and we missed because Justin Watson and Xavier Worthy just don't know how to catch the ball in the end zone, apparently. But I think we can get it done here. They're stat padding his stats a little bit for the MVP too. So if they get within the 5, little play action, think it over to Mark Andrews. How you doing? And the last pick in the same game, Dalton Schultz over 35.5. Yeah, 35.5 receiving yards. Like we said, no Tank Dell when either him or Nico Collins is out. This line has been completely free for him, and it's a great match against Baltimore, who struggles against tight ends. All that together, plus 485. Make sure you lock that in. We have been red fucking hot for 2 months now. We got Christmas gifts to pay for, so we're not planning on stopping. I hope you guys tail, and let's make some fucking money. JJ, appreciate you as always, and to everybody, I hope you guys have a happy holidays. Tell your families we say hello, and let's make some money.